In our next session, Scaling to New Heights, we will celebrate the top 10 companies from DGEMS 2024.
Hello, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed the afternoon and the sessions have been useful to you. Yes? No? Say something. All right, it's been a good day so far. I hope this panel lives up to the level of expectation that you may have had. And we have about 20 minutes for this conversation. 10 minutes for a Q&A round, so I hope you will keep your questions ready for the end of the panel discussion. And as the topic was already communicated and explained, this is to understand what it really takes to scale new heights. So these gentlemen here have a first-hand idea of how it's done. They have made a mark in countries outside of India, and they continue to do so. So we hope that after this panel, you will leave with some ideas and some inspiration which could help you build your business as well. So first of all, we want to start by understanding from all three of you, what is the big global problem that you identified in your various areas and then correlated it with your business model and found an opportunity that made you feel that you could take that leap and expand in global markets? I'll start with you first.
Thank you, Neha. So Cars24 is in the space of auto technology, primarily into the used car space. We started our journey back in 2015. We started our journey right here in Delhi. And our primary vision was to solve the consumer pain points in buying and selling of used cars. And India, as all of us know, that is a developing nation, and the car penetration is less than 3%. So we knew all developed nation like US and Europe, where the car penetration is more than 60–70%. So there's a huge headroom to go. And second, in India, when we started off, our parents and our grandparents were, buying and selling cars in the same way. So, and there has not much change happened since then. So we felt that by leveraging technology, we can really solve the pain points of buying and selling of cars. And that's how our humble journey began. When we started, we felt that we would want to solve the supply side of car business, where we will enable car sellers to quickly sell their car. And that's how we can scale the supply of the cars. And once you have got the supply chain, supply chain sorted, then you can build a very strong B2C business over and above. For 5 years, we continued to iterate, and we were able to find the, not only product market fit, but we also became the leader in used car company in India. And that's how our journey began, that, okay, now we have got the playbook right for India business. And when we look back, we felt that the problem of used car buying and sellers doesn't change much when it comes to India or you go anywhere outside India. Car sellers are looking for good price, quick transactions, and safety of transaction. And the car buyers are looking for good quality of cars and also make sure that they get a good post-sale experience. So when fundamental level, there was not much change in what really the consumers were looking for outside India. We felt that now we got the technology which is fully tested and iterated. We got a capital. In 2020, we became $1 billion company. Now we got a capital, we got a playbook, and the same set of consumer problem exists outside India. So we decided that it's time to take our journey outside India. And currently we are in the UAE and Australia, where we are doing the same playbook that we have used in India to become a market leader. And of course, there are some nuances that exist in each country that you operate. But with the learnings of India, we've been able to become market leader now in UAE as well as Australia. And our ultimate goal is to become continue to penetrate further into these 3 countries that we are present in and become a market leading position over there.
That's interesting. What about you? What was the problem area that you saw potential to actually take benefit from and saw as an opportunity to grow your business?
Thank you for having us. First of all, I think it's been a long day. I can see many of you, probably not the most energetic, but we hope that we don't bore you as much. And the weather is definitely not helping. Many of you might have had your flights delayed. The environment out there is not the coolest. So bear with us. We are, at least the both of us, from Delhi, Gurgaon, NCR. We welcome you to our city. Definitely not the weather we would have liked you to be here. So apologies from the entire residents, including us. I think the question which you've asked, so I'm from Pristyn. We are in healthcare. Hardcore healthcare, we do probably operationally the toughest part, which is surgeries. Actually doing the surgeries ourselves. Healthcare is like largely split into two kinds. There is the tertiary care, where there is the life-threatening procedures, the liver transplant, the brain transplant, neuro, cardiac. And then there is the very large non-emergency surgeries, right? Cataract, ENT, hernia, gallstone, all the knee replacement. So we do that. And, although we are labeled as a tech company, but at heart, we are healthcare enabled by everything else. So if we can't solve healthcare, we can't really do anything else. We've been lucky over the last 5.5 years. We've become, fairly large in India, which also leads me to why we are trying to look outside India. So we're in about 30 cities in the country. We do almost 100,000 surgeries a year. To give you context, we are still 5 years old, 2 years of COVID, and healthcare is the field which takes a toll when COVID comes in. Some of the largest corporate chains do 150,000 surgeries. So 100,000 surgeries is a fairly large number. So we were lucky enough to do that. The context for us was the problems which led us to start healthcare in India was we saw three large issues. The first, the hospitals. There are too many hospitals in the country, unlike what we believe. You'll be surprised that they say the number of hospitals per capita is the lowest in India. But the reality is, when you look at that number deeply, I think the number is almost like 2.8 beds per 1,000 population or something like that. If you look at that number for the top 30 cities versus for the entire India, it just flips. It goes from 2.5, 2.8 to less than 0.8 or something. And this is actually better than US. You'll be surprised, US is 2.5. So healthcare in India, unlike what we sometimes feel, it's concentrated very geographically in the top 30, 40, probably 45 cities, not beyond that. So there are a lot of vacant hospitals. And again, just like they say, there are less doctors in India. You'll be surprised that you go to, in Delhi NCR, and my wife is a doctor, my father-in-law is a doctor, my best friends are doctors, so I've seen those ecosystems around. It is easier to find a job as a digital marketing specialist in India right now, क्योंकि Facebook, Google पे सबको पैसे चलाने आते हैं, but it is hard for a 35-year-old MBBS, MD, residency, expert, practitioner to find a really high-paying job in top metro cities. So they start practicing on their own. And, they end up having all the challenges of finding the patient, managing safety, risk, charge, collection, so a lot of those challenges. And then because secondary care is so unorganized, which is like the cataract, the hernias, all these diseases are so unorganized, patient care is fundamentally broken. And I think we've been doing that for the past 5 years and have, scaled at this point. When we started to look at our future over the next 20 years and not just 5 years, we said, what have we been building and why we should look anywhere else outside India? I'm sorry, a little contrarian view. Why should we look outside India? So we had to really convince ourselves that we should go out and build to the world. And unlike maybe our friend here, we didn't go to the rich countries. We are not in Australia and UAE. We are exploring countries such as Bangladesh, Kenya, even Indonesia, we're exploring those countries. And the reason for that is the healthcare situation in those countries are slightly similar to India. A large population, dense population, that means they're concentrated in slightly smaller geographies. And they have the similar healthcare which is broken. But just since I've got the chance to talk about this, I think as entrepreneurs in this room, and we are all very young entrepreneurs, majority of us, between 5 and 10 years, sir? 10 years into your 18 years, so sorry. Okay, so 5 years? All right, I'm the youngest, my bad. So senior most entrepreneur, I've been around for 15 years, by the way. This is my 4th startup. I failed the first 3. Started in 2010, it didn't work out, so nothing to talk about. But we are still very young companies. You know, we have to talk about next 40 years. Have a very, very clear reason why do you want to go abroad. You know, sir will tell you, we were talking about IdeaForge and drones. We do healthcare. You know, Gajendra does services, you know, old cars. When you go abroad, the time is gone that, hey, aap India se aaye ho aur aap sasti gaadi, sasti healthcare, sasta drone, cheap labor. It's not going to sell. You have to really be really good at your job. If you're building healthcare, you have to have best doctors, most advanced equipment. If you're doing drones, you have to have the best tech. Chahe ab US jaiye, he was explaining us. Or if you're doing services, you have to do the best job at end-to-end, you know, process. So if you're thinking to go abroad, doesn't matter which country you're going in, please make sure your product, your service is, you know, is not going to win on cost. The only area which is going to win on is going to be the quality of opportunity which you're going to take there and, you know, focus on that. And if you're not ready, please don't go. India mein bahut kaam hai. Mat jao.
So what he's saying is very interesting here. He's saying that Indians are no longer looked upon as providers of cheap services. Point taken, and it's also very good that you highlighted that we are not as underserved as we constantly keep telling ourselves in the healthcare segment at least. I don't have the numbers for that, but I was quite surprised when you said that we have many doctors and many hospitals, because the constant narrative in India at least has been that this is one of the segments which is very underserved.
I'll tell you something which is surprising to you. Anybody from Telangana here? Anyone has Telangana? Right. Telangana is one of the fastest growing economies in terms of, you know, just the regions in India. You'll be surprised, hospitals in Telangana, anything which is 70, 80 beds, and beds is a way to describe how large the hospital is, how large the ICU is, talks about the speciality and infrastructure. So beds is a proxy for that. Out of any hospital in Telangana, which is 70, 80 beds, 90% of them are in Hyderabad alone. 90% in Hyderabad and nothing else in the entire Telangana. Chennai has 30,000 patient beds. Even in COVID, they were lying vacant. But you go to larger part of, you know, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, you know, Punjab, Maharashtra, you'll be surprised when you go to tertiary towns or maybe tier 3, tier 4. And we were in 38 cities before we came back to 25. You'll be surprised how geographically consolidated it is, and it's crazy how difficult it is right now.
So that is indeed food for thought. But Vipul, coming to you now. Now, you did say that you have a subsidiary in the US. Tell us a bit about why the US. I mean, drones is a sunrise industry in India. There is so much scope to grow. You probably haven't reached your potential in the Indian market. What was the problem you thought you could solve globally by expanding to the US market?
Thank you, Neha. Good evening, all. Myself, Vipul Joshi. I am the co-founder of IdeaForge. We are probably the first few companies who thought of picking up hardware as a startup.
Yes.
And when the whole world was wanting to solve through softwares, I think we picked up a difficult problem to solve in bringing a technology which was non-existent in the country, and then to build the whole ecosystem as well as a defense-oriented startup to help build a technology wherein as a country we were always bent to import defense tech from across the world. And once when we started taking this technology for practical demonstration to our probable customers, the first reactions used to always be, "Ye college ka project kyun leke aaye ho?" And from there to change the perception to become the company which is supporting now and becoming a reliable second go-to drone product provider, and having done more than 500,000 flights in the hands of the user, I think we have tried to push and bring the change that, you know, India can also build hardware. India can also build a tech which is globally competitive, and it is a safe, reliable system and products which can also be equally relevant for the global markets. So that's the story that we have built in the last 18 years. And now, why in US? Because while I think most of the startups here and most of us who always believe that India is a great market and India is where we need to build our solutions, because I think we as Indians and we being present in this market, we solve for India better than anybody else in the world who can solve it for us. So we build it for India, sitting in India. But US is, I think, from a very specific to drone as an technology, I think they probably were the first adopters of this technology in various use cases, not just whether it is an ISR, which is purely from a surveillance or security perspective, but also from, you know, whether agri use cases, whether it was for mapping, whether it was for inspection, even for consumer tech perspective. I think that is the market which showed the world that this is how this technology could be used from a day-to-day perspective, as well as how it can be a disruptor from ease out of a lot of efforts that were being done either through a heavy equipment or through, let's say, helicopters, which could be riskier. And we strongly believe that we now have a technology which actually could be very, very useful for that market, which is a differentiated product. We could do something which a very large drone as a, you know, if in from a specs perspective, anything which could do by a 10 kg plus class of products, we could take to that market a under 6 kg class to doing a 90 minutes flight, which is an unheard of in the US market, wherein large products, double the size, are able to do any 100 minutes plus kind of a flight. So I think that was our motivation, that we could take an Indian technology, try to promote in sort of the Western world, and also establish that an Indian hardware company can also be globally equally scalable and also more relevant as well.
Indeed, gentlemen, you've very thoroughly laid out what the rationale was and what global problem you were trying to solve by expanding into overseas markets. Now, having set the stage, and now that we have a context to the conversation, let me ask you a bit about your growth journey. As professionals of a company you are trying to expand, I'll come to you first again, Gajendra. So tell me about Cars24. You are in UAE, you are in Australia, you are in Thailand. Now, these three countries are so different. You know, culturally they are different, the market needs are different. And yet you have a very consistent marketing narrative. How have you balanced it in terms of catering to the local preference, striking a chord with your local audience, building that credibility, while also having that very distinct flavor which distinguishes you in a very cluttered market otherwise?
Yeah, so I think the marketing strategy would really be varied based on the country to country you go to. Even in India, if you are, the way you are marketing in, you know, Delhi versus how you are marketing in Bangalore may change. Like in India, every state is a different country. So being marketed in India and being present in almost 50% of the states kind of gave us an idea that, okay, you had to really understand the nuances of, you know, what matters most to the customer when in terms of buying and selling a car. But having said so, when you enter into any different country, and each country you have to look at it very differently. So the first thing that we did structurally is that we decided that we will not going to control marketing from India for any of the overseas country that we operate in. Because we fundamentally believe that there is no way I, as someone sitting out of here, can really understand the consumer deep enough in Australia and can run the marketing strategy. So the first thing that we did was that we would be running each and every country as independently as possible. Meaning learning from people who belong to that country, who lived in that country, have worked in that country, and actually gaining the experience out of them that help us in crafting the marketing strategy that we applied in Thailand, Australia, and UAE. Now, of course, with UAE specifically, we had an advantage because Indian diaspora is quite, affluent in UAE, and being market leader in India gave us a, advantage over there when we launched. Our launch was relatively smoother. However, UAE is, beside Indian diaspora, it's like a global, it's like a global country where you find, Europeans, Americans, Asians, and you have to really identify the nuances of each and every, community to you are catering to and able to really craft your communication around it. However, at the core level in the used car remains fundamentally same. And one thing that we kept it common in our strategy was that is the trust. And there's this very famous line that we in Cars24 that the new car needs marketing and the used car needs trust. So we fundamentally always believe that if you are able to solve for the trust, then you'll be able to really crack the marketing game in the country where you operate. And how do you really earn the trust? And the first, I guess at the very core of it, the way to earn trust is by giving the best-in-class customer experience that your customer can get over there as compared to other players. So we just built entire marketing strategy in countries where we operate right now around trust. And of course, the communication changed according to geography, but that's what we really hammer on again and again. And second, of course, you keep your messaging consistent. Over the years, doesn't matter, you can't change. Once you know that this is the positioning that you are going to take, you really need to continue to develop on it. And learn from it and just become better as the time progresses. So.
Indeed. So thanks for sharing those important lessons on the marketing front. Now coming to you, tell me a bit about the business. How did you adapt your healthcare offerings? How did you go about fundraising when you tapped into different geographies for global expansion?
I think to Vijay's point, it really doesn't matter what you've done in India once you enter a new geography. Yes, you get some benefits of scale and positioning in India, but I think when you enter a new place, you have to literally start from ground up. And it can be as different as, to give you context, when we went to Bangladesh, Indian doctors are not allowed to practice there. So that can't happen. But when we went to Dubai, and although we never launched Dubai, when we were researching and we went to another country in the same context, Indian doctors are wanted like, software professionals. Everybody wants them. So it's very, very different. There is a country where we can take our advanced medical equipments and there are countries where we can't. So I think that is a context that when you go to a country, and to answer your question, absolutely straightforward, you have to really go to the ground and, learn your things again. Right? So it doesn't matter what strategy you are following in India, you build your core muscles. Right? In our case, the muscle is a doctor, advanced equipments, risk, compliance, patient care, recovery. That's fine. But when we go to a country, the nuance changes. Think about Starbucks, right? In US, Starbucks
Think
is
global, act local. That is
I mean it's easier to say, but you go to Starbucks in US, it's like a regular low standard coffee shop. But in India, their outlets are far more nuanced, clean, upmarket, because they're catering to a very different audience or a very different kind of audience. The same audience which drinks Starbucks in India doesn't go to US in Starbucks. They go to a different audience. So I think we have to learn the nuance.
Yes. Vipul, tell me a bit about the regulatory front. When you go to international markets, the regulatory requirements are very different. How do you build a team that is able to adapt to the changes in the regulatory font?
Yeah, especially, when you're looking at a drone industry, whether it is India or across the globe, every country has their own defined way that they are trying to regulate the drone, whether it is a beyond visual line of sight flying, whether it is, having unmanned traffic management, or, finding solutions for how these has to be from a cybersecurity perspective, all the security regulations, etc. And even from pilot licensing perspective, also how you will get your product certified. So it's like, again, driving a street legal car, you also need to have a licensed product as well. So all of this, again, and I agree with both of them that you can't define this, you can't solve for it sitting in India or, without putting your steps on the field. And actually, there are many use cases where you don't really need as well regulated environment, because the use case doesn't really need for you to be in a more complex spaces. But how you look at it is in terms of going to understand it from a legal standpoint, is where you go to the legal regulators, You understand how they give permissions, what is the way forward that they're looking at, because not necessarily that your current product actually suffices or can really deliver as per what those regulations really define. Because, you know, from a very specific to drone perspective, you might have that, you know, you can only fly to, let's say, about 100 meters in the height, and then do your surveillance, which is not necessarily practical because you're right in front. So all of this is when you put your foot on the ground, you really go speak to people. How IdeaForge did it was that we also launched a early adopter program for the users on the street, which is basically also working with the local police force in some of the countries, giving them the products in the hand. And we were speaking backstage that our product is actually what you see, what you would believe, and it not just purely what you've seen in terms of videos, because it's just easy to create some of those videos, and whether they are actually from your product or not. So when the person tries to use it specifically for their use case, they try to understand what this product can do for them and how efficiently or automatively that they can use this product for their particular use case.
Okay, we have 4 minutes before we end the panel, but I can't let you go without asking you this question. So in 30 seconds, each of you will get 30 seconds. And you have to tell me what is your big global vision that you want to achieve in the next 15 years?
I'll answer less than 30 seconds. So like at our global vision is same as what the vision for the organization that we have, that we want to build a company that really outlasts each one of us, each one of our founders. So that's the vision that we really stand by, that whatever we do, we'll take long-term bets, we'll take long-term goals, and we'll do what is right, not compromise or not taking any shortcuts to get quick wins, but always and always optimize for the long runs.
Interesting.
I think our vision is more nationalist. We want India to be a developed nation, and we want to abide by the vision of our Prime Minister. So India needs to be a developed nation in the next 20 years. And not just Pristyn, but as an entrepreneur, I want to be a small but an impactful contributor to that in whatever capacity we can. And I think our generation is lucky to be living through that time. And we have to do it. There is no chance. So product, services, we have to build India, we have to build global, we have to dominate, we have to win. There is no other way.
Indeed, there's no other option. Noted.
So I think the long-term vision is to build an Indian hardware product equally successful in at least 3 countries in the near future.
All right, so with 3 minutes to go, the floor is open for questions. Please raise your hand. A mic will come to you.
Hello, sir. Hello, everybody. I'm Arushi Saxena. I represent Newton Global. It's a financial investment firm. And we are at the stage where we want to evaluate markets where we can penetrate in the most possible way. So I'd like the entire panel to kindly guide on how do you really evaluate, how did you really evaluate which markets you wanted to penetrate, and post-penetration as well, what did you really, which parameters did you utilize to see whether this was a success or whether there was more to build, or if there has to be a plan B or C or D or something on those lines?
Yeah, so the first rule of thumb is that don't go and open any other market, or don't evaluate the market till the time you are in a top 1 or top 2 position in the market that you already operate in, right? When we try to, venture into the new territory, we are always, I would say, we overestimate our confidence and underestimate the complexity that new market really proposes. So, right, like we kind of follow that rule of thumb. Of course, TAM is one of the things that we, always look into, that what is the TAM right now and at how fast that TAM is growing year on year. And the second most important for us is that whether you have an early mover advantage or not. Right? Because time will run out. You are ultimately, in a way, on a clock all the time because of you are funded by the VC money. So you want to make sure that how soon you can see yourself being sustainable over there. And that time clock will also depend on how many competitors do you have out there. So I think in a nutshell, these 3 things we keep in mind before we really think of entering into any other markets that we plan to operate in or we want to go for.
Sorry, just following up, after your, so when you entered the UAE market, what did you evaluate after?
Ma'am, if you don't mind, we'll come back to you for follow-up questions. There are some more questions in the
I can answer you after the conference, yeah.
Divanshu
Yes,
Verma,
and we can even...
Divanshu Verma, co-founder of Redundant Innovation. Question is to Vipul. So Vipul, we are an IoT security company. We primarily secure cyber-physical systems. We have done some work on drones also, and 22 megahertz, and then seen that how did it get compromised. So when I look in, and I've never done an IdeaForge, by the way. That's a disclaimer. Yeah, it's a good product. I know that. And so when you see
not
the
sure,
security, no, it is good. Tell me, I'm a pretty deep guy in that when I'm saying security is secure. So the question is, when we differentiate our products that you are differentiating in US, does security matters or it doesn't matter, or it's the last thing that matters?
See, when a product itself is used for security, I can't say security don't matter. So I think what matters is because now this product is both used for securing as well as something which is used also for attacks. So I think more than ever, because of the proliferation and penetration of this technology and it being in the hands of whether the right people, the wrong people, I'll leave it for people to judge it. But since it is being used for matters which could be of very sensitive natures, which could also compromise lives, security, I think, is paramount. How do we protect the overall system from being overridden, attacked, has to be part of the strategy of how you build the product, whether it is for our own country, India, or whether you take the products to any other countries, because it can be of threat to you as an existence of the organization as well, if you have not solved for it.
One last question.
Hi, good evening. My question is to Mr. Singh. I represent hashtag Medical Writing Solutions. We do medical communications. So it's a service industry. My question is, there is the perception that expansion of service industry is often skeptically looked at. It's looked at more of a cost rather a business strategy or an income model. So what are your thoughts about it, number one? And number two, is there a time-tested model where a service industry can successfully expand globally?
Is your question that if you want to expand a services company, it is looked as a cost? Is that the question?
Exactly. There is this pressure of developing a product the moment you talk about expansion. We face it from investors, we face it from advocacy groups. I want to hear your thoughts about it.
Don't ever build your company for investors. That's the first argument. They are there to guide you, help you, and then get their own financial gains. And very honestly, I'm slightly surprised by that question. In India, the top 20 publicly large market cap companies, 70-80% is services. In US, that's product. So हमें तो product भी बनाना है और, although I am from services, right? So the question is services hard? Of course it is hard. But I think that's one thing that India has done very, very well. It doesn't matter which field we come from, start from IT services, to even in terms of think of entertainment. We've been able to take our movies abroad, right? But I think the core point to your question is, how do you standardize a service, when you have to really, really expand it? And it comes down to literally three things. You really need to know the problem you are trying to solve for the user. And we are surprised sometimes by ourselves as well, how the person who's actually communicating the advantages of their company, their providing, their servicing, they just don't know the problem of the user, right? They know what they want to do. They don't know the problem they are trying to solve. So I think be super, super clear about it. Normally, if you can't describe the problem beyond one sentence, it's game over. So know the problem really, really well. If you know the problem really well, make sure the solution is tested on a very micro scale and it should work. Most services companies fail because they fail to provide an outcome. They give the notion of an outcome, right? I will increase your, sales by my email marketing, but I don't know what is the open rate of my emails, right? So don't have the notion of that. And my problem might be that I'm in healthcare, nobody wants to read about hernia. They want to read about fancy cars and drones. So my problem is that you are not a great email software company or email marketing company. My problem is I'm in healthcare, nobody wants to read about it, let alone sitting on a panel, right? So please know the problem of your user. And when you know the problem, make sure you know the solution. You have tested it on ground zero. Once you've tested it on ground zero, then develop a product which can scale it as, at a slightly larger level. And the final thing is, services is dominant on people, right? You can create the best product out there if you fail as people to deliver those services. And I'll give you the simplest example. One of our close friends runs a company called Blue Smart, right? And Bhavesh is a school senior and very, very close friend as well at Ola, right? But Blue Smart has democratized that a driver will open your car, he will be clean, he will not be eating and smelling something, right, which all of us don't like, and the car will also not have tertiary smells, right? And they've been trying to do it, the scale is still maybe few cities and, by the way, another country, but they have democratized the final end of provider person, in this case a driver. So if you have a representative who is selling your service in US and it's a software, you need to work equally harder on that person as hard as you work on yourself as you selling in India. So the person who's delivering, the problem has to be genuinely, you need to know it, and the solution has to be tested on ground zero with outcome. Don't have the notion, really solve it. I hope it helps.
On that note, we'll end the conversation. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure having you here. And audience, I know many of you have questions. The speakers are around and you can connect with them offline. Thank you so much.